Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight and welcome to What's Up Wednesday. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Heidi Klomhouse. I am the Executive Director for Arizona Hands and Voices, and I am also the Program Coordinator for Guide by Your Side. And tonight we are very excited and happy to welcome Arizona State School for the Deaf and Blind Early Learning Program, as well as Deaf Mentor Program, to provide some update to families that receive services through them on what services will look like moving forward as we try to transition into back to, I should say, in-home services, and whether that's happening in a phase-in or what their strategy is to make that happen going as we move hopefully somewhat past this COVID-19 and back into some sense of normalcy. So with that, I want to welcome to the screen Melissa Hole. Melissa is one of the supervising teachers for the Southern region, and we have Dr. Kendra Benedict, who is the statewide director for the Early Learning Program. Welcome. And we also have the supervisor for the Deaf Mentor Program, Christina Varayo Davis. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to you guys. Who I don't know who wants to go first, but we very, very much appreciate you and your time tonight and sharing the information with all of us and the families. So.
I'll go ahead and start. We don't have anything formally planned, just kind of are here to share some updates and answer any questions you might have. But before I start, can I get an idea of who we have here? I see a lot of our providers on, so hello. I'm glad you guys are here. Can you just flash your camera on real quick, or give me a thumbs up on with using your reactions if you're a parent? Any other? Yeah, all right, awesome. Okay, cool. Just kind of wanted to get an idea of who my audience was, so thank you. So yeah, we are for the first time in how many months, guys? 13 months, 14 months, just starting to go back into homes. Melissa, my colleague, calls it a slow trickle, and I think that's a perfect way to describe it. It is on a not only county by county basis, but a local area by local area. As we all know, take a look at Cochise County or Maricopa or Coconino, and what's happening on one side, not quite what could be happening on the other side. So we do go by county metrics, but then we also use data happening in local communities. So there are some counties right now that are back in what is being called phase 1. The 3 different phases are alternative methods, phase 1, limited in person, and phase 2, expanded in person. And then after that would just be back to things as normal. So alternative methods is what we've been in all this time for the last 14 months. Reaching families either through Zoom or some other online platform, text messaging, email, phone calls, whatever it might be. And now we have some counties that have moved into phase 1, where on a case-by-case basis, if a child's needs are not being met through alternative methods, then we can look at some sort of in-person scenario, whether that be in the home, in the backyard, at a local park, at the child's daycare, wherever that might be. And again, on a very limited basis, and if the child's needs are not being met. We still want to practice with all precautions and keep folks as safe as we can as the number of people getting vaccinated goes up. I think we'll continue on this path, and that's exciting. But for now, that's kind of where we are. So wasn't an overnight, okay, we're back in homes now. And if you're wondering where we are and why we're not there yet, that's why, because it's not a full-blown, okay, we're back. So that's just a real quick and dirty overview of where we're at. I'll let Melissa and Chrissy share any thoughts that they might have, and then we can answer questions. Melissa?
This is Melissa. Yes, as Kendra said, we're coming back in a slow trickle, and The metrics are showing that it's safe to do so in certain counties, and the state of Arizona is definitely looking better and better for that. There are some protocols that are in place for us as well when we come back in. We will be still wearing face coverings, and we will still be utilizing social distancing. And so you know that we'll be doing health checks before we come in, and we'll have a little questionnaire to go over with each of you before we come into the homes to make sure everybody's healthy and well and it's safe for everyone involved. Christy, did you have anything to share?
Okay, sorry, moment for the interpreter. Go ahead. So I just wanted to mention that our mentor program, we have been clearing the ELP, and we're following those just the same. So we do have a lot of communication with the teachers, with the families, and that's really what's the only difference for us. When the time is right for us to go back in person, we're going to use a 50%, so 50-50. So what does that mean? So if a family, if we see them on a weekly basis, then, and we are able to see them in person, then 1 week we will see them in person. The next one will be Zoom. Then the next week will be in person, and it'll go back and forth like that. So it just depends on the counties, like what was just said. So we're doing that 50-50 method because our team, there's just not enough staff. We don't have a lot of staff. So we're trying to meet the needs and use that 50-50 method. Just like everybody had just mentioned about, you know, the counties and that we're looking to see what's going on. So we're just going to take our time.
Thanks, Chrissy. Melissa?
This is Melissa again. As all of you parents know, we work with the Arizona Early Intervention programs, and we are a part of each of your teams. What some of you may not know is that there are many different teams across the state that we work with. And so while we're looking at the metrics and looking at when it's safer to go in, we're also working with our teams to see what their decisions are as well. So we'll be working with your service coordinator, or if there are other team members that are coming into your home, that will also play a part in who's coming and how often. That's all a part of that slow trickle.
And to piggyback on that as well, Lisa Ring just joined us. She was having trouble connecting. Hi, Lisa. She's our supervising teacher up in the northern part of the state. And she and I have both been participating on ASIP's COVID task force since, gosh, last summer, I guess. I can tell you that ASIP has been putting in copious amounts of time into the resumption of limited in-person services. This is not something that they take lightly, as is evidenced by the fact that it wasn't until 12 months after the pandemic hit that we were even allowed to consider going back into homes. Schools reopened last August, many of them, but we did not. We continued through alternative methods. So Lisa, can I maybe, if you want to share just a little bit, it's just informal, anything that's happening up in the northern region and on the reservations and what services are looking like there?
Sure. Hi, everybody. This is Lisa Ring, and I'm one of our supervising teachers with the Arizona Schools for the Deaf and Blind. And I would say, because I joined a little late, I'm missing a little bit of information, but I would say, just to support what other folks are saying, we're following the metrics for when it is safe to return into limited home visits. And so a lot of our counties are not at that place yet where that is a safe thing to do. But for our counties that are, we actually are excited to get started and support the families with some limited in-person visits. So I just know of one teacher that went out today on the road, and was really excited to get to see a family, and they were going to be meeting outdoors And that was one county that is available to do that. Took a lot of conversations back and forth with the parents and setting up just the right situation so it was safe for everybody and everybody felt comfortable. So I was going to add that, just to make sure that if you have additional questions that you really do reach out to the teacher that's working with your family or the deaf mentor and, chat with them about those possibilities. And if you're not sure where the county is, where you live, and if it's open for limited in-person visits, just do reach out to the teacher that works with your family and connect with her. And I'm not sure if folks have talked about some of those things we really want to support families on. If you're feeling like you're at this critical point in your child's learning, say they just got fit with hearing aids and you want additional support for that, or they're like just ready to like make this breakthrough with something, we want to support your family with that. And of course through remote services, but if it feels like there's a need for a limited in-person visit, we're anxious to get back to do that too, when it's safe to do so.
And I'll clarify what limited means, because our own staff had questions about that. What does limited mean? Not only is it limited in the number of families that we're seeing, we don't want to go from home to home. Like in the past, we may, our providers may have seen 2 or 3 families in one day. We don't want to be doing that now. Part of our mitigation strategies and keeping this safe is to limit in-person visits to 1 family a day right now to avoid any cross-contamination. So that's one thing. And then limited in that they're not happening as often. We might do a combination like Chrissy just talked about, a 50-50 model. And then again, of course, not everyone we're not able to do it for everyone given the metrics of any particular county. So that's what we mean by limited in-person services. That was perfect, Lisa, thank you. So that's kind of just a quick and dirty overview. We'd love to answer any questions people might have, or we're here to talk and chat with you guys and inform you if we can. And if we can't, we'll find the answers and get back to you.
This is Heidi. Thank you so much, ladies. I don't see anybody just yet. If you have a question, feel free to turn your video on and raise your hand, or use the raise hand features within the reaction and we can call on you. Don't be shy. This is your opportunity to have, this open platform and be able to ask the questions that you want and to kind of get the same answer, because you have everybody here with, providing that guidance so that everybody's on the same page. So this would be a great opportunity for you to ask questions. I do have a question. Ira, go ahead. I'm going to let you go.
Hi, I'm Ira Ellefson's mom. Not really a question so much as a comment or an observation. I already told Estefania this the last time we met with her, but I just noticed that he is so much more expressive and communicative with sign language when he's with her on the computer. But, because he's 1, he gets maybe like these little snippets with her. He'll like come on and la 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 and then like disappear. And I know everybody's anxious to get back, but like I just feel like it's so important that he be one-on-one with her as much as humanly possible. Because I do feel like I just noticed it's like such a huge difference the way he communicates with us with sign language versus her. It's just like totally different. Anyway, that's it.
And I want to encourage you to please talk to both the deaf mentor and your deaf and hard of hearing teacher and express this. If you're really wanting more in person, talk to them so they can talk to the rest of the EI team, the early intervention team. And if in your case, that's what's appropriate, so that you can get that. Because of course, and first of all, I'm just touched, and it just makes me want to cry to hear that your sweet 1-year-old is engaged at all on the computer with someone signing. That's just a miracle in and of itself. But yeah, so just talk to them and so we can get back in there if we can safely do so.
Yeah.
This is Heidi. Great. I see your hand up on Matthew's iPad. Go ahead.
Hi, it's Lori saying I'm one of the Guide by Your Side parent guides. And a question that I've gotten from several of my families is and I think this kind of just goes in general for early intervention. And then when they switch, when they turn 3, what's the difference of a child who is 2 years and 364 days old and a child that is 3 years old of getting in-person and virtual services? Like, they want to know why one can have in-person and one can't. And I don't know how to explain that to them.
And certainly, Melissa, Lisa, Chrissy, chime in here. In my mind, the easiest way to explain that is when you enter a school facility, a preschool or an elementary school, we can put mitigation strategies in place to better protect that environment. We can't do that in someone's personal home. There are very limited things that we can ask of a family. Well, most families, of course, would be compliant and put a mask on and tell us that no one has been sick in the last 48 hours, but things happen. And it could be that we walk into a house and there's a grandma that lives upstairs who's not feeling well. And about 2 days later, she's diagnosed with COVID. And so there's just so many uncontrollable scenarios in individual people's homes, where at a school, even though it's a larger environment, we have more controls we can put in place.
I think they're actually talking not about the school setting, but in-home therapies. How kids over 3 are getting in-person in-home therapies. And they want to know why. Like, what's the difference of a child that's 3 and a child that's 2 and 9 months or 11 months?
Let Melissa take that. She seems to have the answer.
I don't have the answer. This is Melissa. I don't have the answer, but what I can share is it's a different agency. And
Right.
that's their rules and their determinations, right? And
Okay.
and I've been confused by that from the beginning of this as well, because it's exactly the same question I've had. If we're talking about the same environment, what is the difference between an infant and a 5-year-old? I know there's a big difference, but what we're looking at the environment, and I don't know why that particular agency made that decision, but they did early on.
Right.
Lisa, did you have anything to share about that?
I was just going to say, even though they may be a state agency, they have had a different process. So I would agree with Melissa that they've made different determinations for that.
Similar to schools, look at school districts. School district to school district, you've got districts making different decisions. Some that have been open from the get-go, some that are still closed. So
That's a good analogy, Kendra.
Yeah.
So do you think the best way to explain it to them is just to say it's just different agencies and different policies that they have? Okay. Thank you.
This is Heidi. I was going to throw that same analogy out that you made about the schools, because two schools that are 3 blocks away from each other have very different policies of what they are on campus. So it would be the same idea, if you will, or same concept when it comes to 2 different agencies or organizations that you're receiving services from. They're going to have their own protocols in place, their own practices, things like that. So absolutely, that makes sense. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Feel free to turn your video on or raise your hand within the reactions. Ira.
Sorry, me again. And I'm sorry I came in late. Some of you guys already talked about this, but are you gonna have the Mommy Me program in the fall?
This is Melissa. I believe you're talking about the toddler class on the
Yes.
Tucson campus.
Yeah.
It is our hope to do that. I'm looking at Kendra's eyebrows. We're going through each of the phases for the in-home piece. And I think that that's the goal. We have to see what's going to happen with numbers and where we're going. Am I speaking out of turn there, Kendra?
No, not at all. And I think that's certainly our goal. And I can tell you one thing that that points to that goal is possible, because our campus, we are tied to our campuses. The preschool program in Phoenix and the preschool program in Tucson are on the main K-12 campus. And so we've had to abide by the mitigation strategies that they've put in place all year. And so one of those mitigation strategies has been no visitors on campus. And they have just decided, assuming that the statistics stay as they are and continue to improve, that starting July 1, we can have visitors back on campus, which means tours can continue again. Parents can start to see the preschool program as an option for their child if they choose to do that. It won't have to be over Zoom with one of our teachers carrying an iPad around the classrooms, bless their hearts. So that is a positive sign that we should be able to put that back in place. Staffing's a whole nother issue, but I think we'll be able to look at that as a definite possibility. So thanks for asking.
And this is Melissa again. It's also going to depend on numbers, right? We're still going to have to be looking, well, we'll see what happens in the fall, but right now we're still looking at how many folks can be in one area at a time. So it might not come back right away looking exactly like it did in the past, but it's the goal to start something again.
This is Heidi. Wonderful. Yeah, I can certainly understand that, monitoring at all times. We've put a pause and held the pause on any in-person events until we see what happens within the fall, because, if we look at last year, we were fine during the summer and then the fall hit and it was like, uh-oh. So I certainly understand that. I did see somebody come up on the screen. I want to say it right. Is it Bea or Baya? Did you have a question? I wanted to give you the opportunity if you did. Okay. This is Heidi. Feel free to go ahead and open up your video or raise your hand or use reactions if you have a question or a comment. I do have a question I'll throw out there, and you may have answered it in some way, but just for a little clarification. When you're talking about a county by county or case by case analysis as far as who's going to get services, are families able to request that they have services? And then on the flip side of that, if they don't want anybody in their home, can they stay virtual even if you are going back in the homes?
I don't want to keep jumping in, Melissa or Lisa or Chrissy, you're welcome. Okay. Yeah, so again, just like I encouraged, I think it was Ira, if you're ready for more services and you feel like what's being done now through alternative means isn't working, have that conversation. Even if the team determines at that point it's not safe, revisit it the next week. This is such a fluid situation. We have counties that enter into phase 1 and then because of data go back to alternative methods. So we move in and out, backwards and forwards in some of these counties too. Am I able to share my screen? I'd be happy to show you the spreadsheet that we keep to monitor this. I don't know if maybe having a visual will make people feel better about how closely we are monitoring this.
Sure, Liliana, this is Heidi, if you will give the sharing screen ability, and then just be mindful for the ASL interpreter. It will take a minute to locate if there's somebody talking or signing.
Yeah, and I'll just pull it up for a quick second and then.
Kendra, this is Lisa, yep. Can I add to this too, that just for clarification, that if you're a family that lives in tribal areas like the Navajo Nation or Hopi Reservation, and you're not, your tribe, your nation is not said it's, you can start those in-person visits, then even though the county says it's okay to start services, the tribal sovereignty does override that. So that's sometimes confusing because you could be in Navajo County and it be open, but you could live on the Navajo reservation and not be open. So just a clarification when Kendra shows you that spreadsheet.
Thank you, Lisa. That's exactly accurate. I'll give a minute for people's screens to adjust. So this is the spreadsheet that we keep internally. We look at the Department of Health Services schools data dashboard. You can Google that and it will come up. The data is always a week old, and they give you the cases per 100,000 in each area, and then the percent positivity of tests. And then based on those numbers, then if you look over to the right of the chart, it says continuum of services. And you can see right now how many are in phase 1 and how many are in alternative methods. We update this every week as the metrics are updated, typically on Thursdays. Sometimes the metrics aren't updated till over the weekend, but they usually come out with them on Thursdays. And this is what all of our providers refer to and look at to make sure that we're following protocol.
This is Melissa. The other thing we want to share with you all is that even if your county says that it's ready for our phase 1, some of our contractors have requested that if we are coming from a county that's not in phase 1, that's still in significant growth, that we not come into their county to provide those services. So that's just something to keep in mind if you know you have a teacher who travels to where you are.
That's a good point. And then Heidi, you also asked about a family if they wanted to continue with teleintervention. As of right now, teleintervention is not an approved methodology of service delivery under ASDB's guidelines outside of the pandemic. With that said, for all intents and purposes, and listening and being involved in conversations with ASDB over the last year, I don't think tele is ever going away. I don't think that, how it's going to even out at the end of the day. Will it be, when it becomes a situation where if you want tele, you can have tele, not because you have to have it because of COVID, but because it works best for your family. At the end of the day, what will that percentage of families look like? I don't know. Some people, you hear from some families, they love it. They don't have to clean their house when someone's coming over. I've heard that so many times. But, or others, they just really miss it and it's not working for their family. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see over the next year or two how that all works out in the end. But I don't think it's going away.
This is Heidi. Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, Lori shared with us last week. I think it's House Bill. Let me see. It's House Bill 2454 was just signed by Governor Ducey. That is to expand telehealth. So it's interesting to see how what the outcomes are after COVID, as far as some of the things that we keep in place, as far as accessibility to medicine and things like that.
That's a good point that you brought up, because one of the things that I think is preventing ASDB from moving forward with this is there are other providers like physical therapists, occupational therapists, and I don't know a lot about it, I'm not the expert here at all, but whose licenses depend, like right now there was an executive order allowing them to do that. But
Right.
Outside of COVID, I don't know what that'll look like. I think Chrissy had her hand up a second ago.
I'm sorry, I can't get it to pin. Sorry, I can't get it to pin, but go ahead. So I just wanted to clarify with the Deaf Mentor Program, we had limited resources and limited staff. So the families, I'm sure they do prefer, the Zoom. It's very comfortable. And if that's their preference, we can continue to provide it. But we have discussed with a lot of the county, and, we were discussing different things. We're monitoring, we're keeping in touch, we're communicating with all of them, and we're going along with the process. And if those families do want Zoom, we can definitely do that.
This is Heidi. That's good to hear. And I will say, for the delivery of services, even though it set us back and we probably all at one point or many points throughout COVID freaked out and tried to figure out how this was going to work, or, just trying to wrap our heads around it. I will say that, I think I can speak for everybody. We've all gone beyond, above and beyond what we even thought possible, whether we're a parent, whether we're a professional, being a wife at home, any of those things. We've done more than we ever thought humanly possible when being faced with these adversities. So, and just seeing, I think it's helped us to expand our minds a little bit, if you will, because sometimes change is hard and people aren't willing to change unless it's forced. So I can appreciate some of the positive of COVID, whereas, we've been trying to move into this platform of online providing opportunities for families, because we don't have, as far as hands and voices, we don't have somebody in every part of the state that we can offer the same thing, equally to all families. So, but by being able to use this virtual platform, we can, because it means anyone can join. So I hope that in some way or another that many organizations and agencies and things keep some of these things in place, just to give those families those opportunities. Because like you said, Kendra, we don't have to clean our house. We don't have, I can pop my screen up here and you won't see if my bed's not made. It's not, and just to give opportunities where to those that might resist or might not take advantage of services just because maybe they are a person that don't like having their home invaded anyways. They don't want people in their home. But I think this is a great option of just, having it open and another way of doing things. So Lisa, I see you popped up.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Heidi, I just have to comment on what you were sharing earlier, in that I think for families that do live in rural and remote areas where there are not a lot of deaf children or families in the area, that these opportunities, like you were saying, this is the positive that has come out of COVID-19, where, we could have a family in Window Rock and a family in Bullhead City and one in Yuma attending a holiday party that you guys helped us with, from the very far, northern part of the state to the far southern part of the state. So I think that, we will continue to be creative in that way so that we can be more inclusive for families that, especially I think, don't live in metropolitan areas, where they have limited opportunities to meet other families that have a deaf or hard of hearing child. So I appreciate your, celebrating that, because I think that's a lot to celebrate. So.
Absolutely. This is Heidi. Absolutely. I agree. I want to take a moment. Does anybody in the audience, please ask your question. Go ahead and pop your video on or raise your hand, or you can use the reaction button to raise your hand and unmute yourself to ask those questions. And I do know for Spanish interpreting, if you need the Spanish interpreting, that is in the chat box, and they have been reposting that frequently. I do not see any questions or comments in the chat. So this is Heidi. So I'll go ahead and ask another question. So for a family, that if they are living in a county that is not, you guys have not, still, so just so I'm clear, so the alternative, I think I have a problem with the way that they're classified as far as the names of them. So I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So the alternative method is what we're doing, what we've been doing during COVID. We're just remote, right? So if there's a family that's in that county and they want services, that's where they would ask their provider, and they would look at that case by case to see what can be done for in-person services, correct? Okay. So I'm just wondering how that looks for the family, like you said. Okay. So I'm trying to wrap my head around what I want to say, and my mind's a jumble. So somebody else feel free to jump in and say something.
I'd like to ask a question. So
Hi,
this
Laura,
is
go ahead.
Hey, Heidi. So I'd like to know, I heard about the bilingual grammar curriculum that's being implemented for next preschool year. I'd like to know, do parents have an opportunity to get some training or knowledge about that?
So our teachers are going through that training. They've received some already, but they're by no means done. We're very lucky to have the supervisor that's over that implementation was involved in the original norming and research of that curriculum. So we're excited about that, that he's been here for a year now and helped to bring us that to us, because it's intended, from my understanding, and I'm going to be the first one to admit, I'm not intimately familiar with it. But it starts at kindergarten, but because of his familiarity with it and his belief that it can work for preschool, we're adapting it. So long story short, when we know enough about what we're talking about and what we're doing, we'll start to educate the families. But until we know more, it's probably not a good idea. But yeah, we will, most definitely. Yeah, we can make that available.
Okay, thank you.
This is Heidi. Thank you, Laura. Dina, do you want to go ahead and jump on? You can unmute yourself and ask your question or comment. You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, my kid's crying on the background.
Oh, yeah, we all have that happen once in a while.
Well, my son's about to turn 5, so I know my program is about to end with the deaf mentor. What's gonna happen after that?
This is Heidi. So go ahead, Christy, I'll let you answer first and then I'll jump in if you need me.
Yeah. So if you're ending the Deaf Mentor program, that's such a bummer, but we're so excited about you being supported with Arizona Hands and Voices, and you might be able to take some ASL classes. We might be able to offer those in the fall at PDSD for the parents. Some other options that you might have, those are some of the options you might have for now.
This is Heidi. Yeah. So as Christy was mentioning, there's a lot of links and things too, which is not ideal, but because, essentially you want to learn ASL in person, but there are some classes, there are some different resources out there to be able to continue that. And, by all means, you can certainly connect with Arizona Hands and Voices. Our deaf and hard of hearing guides don't teach the language, but it gives you the opportunity to use it. If you had a deaf and hard of hearing guide, to be able to use that and maintain your skills. And then the more you use it, the more you pick it up. So, and then hopefully as we move further along, you'll start seeing some of those maybe in-person events happening again, because those are the areas just normally, and I'm sure Christy agreed that, that they encourage when you're trying to acquire that language is to get amongst it. So you go to events, you use it, you interact with people. So definitely, as things hopefully
Yes, that's
lessen
right,
with
Christy
COVID,
says.
that's what we want to see happen. Kendra?
To add to that, and Christy, please clarify for me if I'm speaking out of turn here, but I understood Jennifer to say, Jennifer's the director of the deaf program at ASDB. And I know that we would love deaf mentors to be available through seniors in high school. We
Right.
just don't have that capacity. I think in a very limited basis, they're looking at some kiddos who were late identification, who did not get services, and that might possibly be an option to continue. Christy, I don't want to speak out of turn. Can you clarify?
Okay. Yeah. So we've already written out a proposal for those limited services for kinder through second grade, based on language analysis with their minimal language, like no language, or they come from an English speaking family or a Spanish speaking family, so they have limited ASL, so they don't have any access to ASL. So those children that are identified, I've already sent a proposal, and we're waiting for approval for that. I'm hoping we'll get approval, and then we'll be able to continue to provide the services to those children who meet that criteria. So that's what we're hoping for.
This is Heidi. Thank you for that. And I did see your hand, Laura. I'll call you to just 1 second. I brought a question to mind. So I know, like with IEPs, those that are at school levels and things like that, they're talking about compensatory services for those that might need to make up services that they might have missed. So I'm curious, is that something that early learning program or deaf mentor program, I think that kind of what you were just talking about, Christy, kind of answers that. But for early learning program, for those families that maybe didn't get the intense services because it was Zoom, or maybe they limited and said, no, we don't want it as often because of, it's only Zoom or whatever. Is there some type of extension beyond the 3 years of age where it's like a compensatory service or something to make up for what they might have gotten in person? Because, the reality is it is still very different.
Right. As far as compensatory services in birth to 3, that was something that has certainly been talked about, but correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, there's nothing that's ever come down officially that has given us guidance, and that being something we have to do. With that said, our providers over the course of the last year, very informally, have continued to see families, especially kiddos who were late identification, and continue to support those families either in that period of time. Like, we had a lot of kids turn 3 last spring or last summer, right when everything closed down. So they didn't get to start preschool. And so our providers would continue to work with those families. But seeing that need is now starting conversations where we want to have something more formal, where families that do come in, because are always going to be there, hopefully not in as great of numbers as they've been this last year, but there will be. And how can we provide something more formal, like a 6-month boot camp, I don't know, something that we can make available to families that didn't get into the system until very late, because you don't get the same support as a parent when you transfer to Part B services from Part C. When you go into preschool in the schools, there isn't that hand holding, I guess, that support that you get in birth to 3 that guides you along the way.
This I agree, and the guidance is so much needed. I'm hard of hearing some idea, oh, you already know what to do, and not true, not the case. We all need guidance, and we need an understanding of what's next, and the services, and what, how to develop, and all of that, help our children thrive. But I always, as I've gone into working with families, those ones that are late ID'd, it's even myself, I was 2 years, 6 months before we got a deaf mentor. And I felt I would kind of jip. I was like, well, wait a minute. I didn't get as much as everybody else, So I just feel for those families that don't get the full benefit of all the services that are available. So I'm very happy to hear that there is some talk about that. I'd love to see that in some capacity move forward, because it is a case-by-case basis. I mean, if there's children out there that are still not hitting those milestones and need further services, or even just a parent need more guidance and need a little bit more in-depth one-on-one. Kendra?
Yeah. This is Kendra. It's really hard right now to plan for the future, short-term and long-term, because we don't know the numbers that are out there. At any given time in the last year, referrals across disability categories was down 50% in the birth to 3 range. And we know that there have been kids that we serviced in birth to 3 that now aren't showing up on any preschool lists anywhere because they just didn't enroll, because why? And so it's so hard to predict what numbers we're going to see this fall, next fall. I mean, I think it's going to be a
Right.
couple years until we like see any normalcy as far as that goes, and can make better judgments as to what might happen and be able to plan accordingly. Like Melissa was saying, you know, with the parent toddler class. Well, we don't know if we'll even be allowed to have more than 10 or 12 people in a room together, even if the campus is open, or maybe we don't even, maybe parents aren't still comfortable coming back, so we don't even have enough to justify the class. You know, it's just, it's kind of a wait and see game right now, and then be ready for anything.
This is Heidi, absolutely. And I agree with you. The outcomes of what this last 14 months, you know, we have yet to see that. We're going to continue to see those ripple effects for several years down the road for those that never even made it to identification, or, you know, and you guys know that, but just, yeah, it's going to be a long time picking up the pieces. I want to acknowledge, I know that Laura had her hand up, Laura, and then I saw Cinda pop up with her hand up. If you want to, Laura, and then Cinda.
Yeah, I wanted to just pretty much connect with Dina. Dina, I get your pain. My daughter's actually graduating from preschool this year too, and she's 5 now too. So I get it. The Deaf Mentor program has helped us out so much. You know, it has given us so much guidance. And I was one of those parents that didn't get to have the Deaf Mentor, you know, right away in Amelie's life. I think we had her when Amelie was about 2, a little over 2. So, I mean, we missed out on so much in those early years. And so when, you know, Chrissy came along in our life, she was a blessing and exactly what we needed. And so I'm with you there. And I just wanted to offer, if you ever wanted to meet up or, you know, or connect, I'm happy to connect with you, because I believe our kids are almost around the same age. So, yeah.
This is Heidi. I love that. And I have both of your guys' contact info. I can connect you. So Dina, with your permission, I will do that. Awesome. I love it. Parent connections. And then Cinda, did you have a question? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct, so I apologize, but please feel free to ask your question or comment.
You are saying my name right. I didn't mean to press it. My son got a hold of my phone and pressed that button. So it wasn't meant to be for me to ask a question.
Got it. No problem. Thank you. Okay. So we are about 7 minutes away from the top of the hour. Is there anyone that has any other questions or comments or wants any clarification on anything that was, any of the information given tonight?
This is Cinda. So I actually, now I just thought about a question. I unfortunately did not get to get here on time. Is there going to be a transcript or anything we can read to get a little bit more update on what you guys were talking about? I got here about 30 minutes ago.
This is Heidi. You will be able, we are streaming live to Facebook, and this is being recorded, and we'll be uploading a link. We'll be uploading a video onto our Arizona Hands and Voices YouTube channel. So you will be able to see it either on Facebook or on the YouTube channel. You'll be able to review it as you want to.
Thank you.
Of course. And Cynthia, I see your hand. Go ahead, feel free to unmute yourself or come on the video. Welcome.
Hi, feeding time.
Yeah.
Okay, just a comment. We just started not too long ago, well, months back. So we haven't even had a chance to have like in-person visits. So we don't really know what that is like, but we are excited. It's probably a little bit away still, but excited to finally kind of like see the light at the end of the tunnel for everybody. And I'm excited for what's coming, even if it's gonna take a little bit longer. Even with the Zoom visits, we are learning a lot. Well, me about my baby activities and how to play with them. And, you know, our teacher is great. So we are excited about what's coming. So just wanted to say that. And thank you for everything that everybody does for us.
This is Heidi. That's so great. And you know, that actually brings up a really good question. So maybe if one of you will take just a quick moment or two, for those that have never had in-home person, you know, in-person services, what does that look like for them? Just to kind of give that brief overview, because they really don't know if they've never had it.
I will be happy to share. In-home services are a lot. I feel like you're able to deeply more connect with your service providers. I feel like you're able to learn a lot more, especially like with Chrissy and her program. I learned better like through, actually like seeing them face to face versus online. It's convenient and it is nice, but I do learn better when I'm in person because I'm able to focus like completely there. And then when I'm thinking about the whole program together, I'm thinking that I made lots of meaningful connections that you don't get from Zoom. And even your kids as well. So like I'm for both, but I do see a more meaningful, deeper connection in person. But yeah.
This is Heidi. Thank you, Laura, for sharing that parent perspective. I appreciate that. It's definitely true. There is a more meaningful connection, especially with those of you within the Deaf Mentor Program, trying to see 3D in a 2D world, or, it's not ideal. So being in person, being hands-on, interacting, and even just with regular hearing specialists and teacher of the deaf, you need that, it's a stronger connection, a stronger bond, because it's very informal in a way, and it's impersonal via the camera. But do any of you, Lisa, Melissa, or Kendra, want to chime in on what the home services, what that looks like in person? How is it different from what you do via Zoom?
Melissa and Lisa and Chrissy are the experts there. I will let them take the floor.
Well, I appreciate the parent perspective on that, because I think that just is powerful. I'd like to say, because our services are, the home visits are a coaching model, that, that part should look pretty similar. So, if we're coaching on a certain priority of your, say, mealtime, if we set it up right and we've done some planning together before the visit, hopefully, your toddler is in the high chair and we can be coaching you through Zoom. But in person, we would be there. You would still be doing the major part of the interaction with your child, but there's things we might see that we don't see through Zoom. We might pipe in and your child might get to hear, but two people's voices better, of course, or see see two people signing to get a richer experience, I would say. But I'd like to say that a lot of the content hopefully is the same as what we do in homes. But, we're not sitting on the couch with you and getting a feel for your home situation. We're only seeing, we're all in the boxes, the Zoom boxes, so we do miss that. And for those families that may have just been on remote services since the start, it probably is, it does feel a bit different, I would say, so, but hopefully the content, focusing on your daily routines, what you're doing every day with the child. And we have decent connectivity with our phones or our computers. We can still see a lot and hopefully give you guys good support. So Melissa, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, you said a lot of what I was thinking, Lisa, that it's just different in the home, right? And so what Lisa was sharing about, if we're there and you're in the middle of a coaching session and we see something that we might not have seen on the computer, we might have seen a baby sign that we had missed on the computer, or maybe there was a sound or a babble that we could have heard. Also in the home, you might be sitting for that snack and your little one is done and they're ready to get up. Well, it's much easier when we're in person to be able to follow that lead and follow you into another area and just follow whatever the routine is. It happens on the computer. It just is a bit more natural when we're there in person.
This is Heidi. Thank you so much for sharing that. Christy, go ahead. I see your hand. We'll give a moment to the interpreter.
Okay. So like the parent perspective, like they had just mentioned, I much rather be in person because, you know, the deaf world is kind of a 3D. You know, when we're in a 2D environment, we're having to move around and, you know, show you all the time. And it can be really confusing. And, you know, it's hard for the parents to understand, but we're patient. You know, I feel definitely the same.
This is Heidi. Thank you so much. Cynthia, I want to acknowledge, I saw your hand up on the screen, but I think that was from when you already spoke. Is that correct? Or did you have another question before we wrap up?
No, that was everything.
Okay, thank you so much, Cynthia.
Thank you for sharing everything with us. So
Of
excited
course.
again.
Of course, this is Heidi. So as we wrap up the hour, I want to give a huge thank you to all of you ladies, Christy, Lisa, Melissa, and Kendra. Thank you so much for taking the time on a Wednesday night to be with us. Kendra, do you have something real quick?
Yeah, can we just give a shout out to all our providers also that are on this call? It's after
I was
hours,
going to.
showing up when they don't have to. And I don't know if you
Right.
can flash your cameras on for a quick second. We've got deaf mentors on, we've got teachers on, and they're just the most dedicated group of people. And I just sit here on Zoom all day. They're the ones out doing all this. So just want to give them a shout out.
This is Heidi. I absolutely agree 100%. And I was going to say the same thing. I would just say thank you to all of the providers because I see all their names and you guys are all a wonderful group. We take our hats off to you and we absolutely enjoy working with you and collaborating with all of you as we, you know, continue to support families. And we, you know, thank you for taking the time on, like I said, on a Wednesday night, probably right smack in the middle of dinner for some of you guys. And just, you know, for sharing everything and just being there for our families and showing up. We appreciate that always. And for all the parents that provided some questions and comments and sharing their perspectives, we really appreciate you as well. And, you know, the Deaf Mentor Program, Christy and your team, I see some of your team on here as well. Thank you for joining us. And a huge shout out to our interpreter, Christine. And thank you to ASDB for providing our Spanish interpreter as well. We very much appreciate that. I do want to make a couple announcements. We have Arizona Hands and Voices has an event tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. It is our second Story Beat event at 10 a.m. And it is featuring the book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar. One of our parent guys will be hosting that and going through the different tips and things, some of the things that you already work with your provider, but just sharing that perspective as well and getting the kids up and moving and story time, bubble time, music time. It's a lot of fun to see all the kids engaged on the screen. So we hope that you can join us in the morning at 10 a.m. And if you can't, it does happen monthly on the second Thursday at 10. And then also we are having another What's Up Wednesday, 2 weeks from tonight. The flyer will go out tomorrow. And it's another session of Ask a Deaf and Hard of Hearing Guide. So it's going to be featuring our deaf and hard of hearing guides, and they're going to kind of make it like a topic focus type thing, talking about the mayhem that mothers face. So during the month of May, just kind of put a little play on that word mayhem. You know, we've had kids that throw our devices or, you know, they lose things like that. Just talking about what we face as parents and then the deaf and hard of hearing perspective. So we're excited to have that coming up. That will be 2 weeks from tonight on May 26th. So look out for that flyer and we hope that you guys will join us. And we thank you all again for joining us tonight. You all have a wonderful night. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
See you
I love
tomorrow.
seeing faces. See you tomorrow.